Okay. So how was that going? Like, tell me about that. Just kind of getting things set up down there.
Yeah, so I worked at the same place for about 5.5 years. It was called Exos, which is a human performance company in the States. That's how I ended up in North Dakota.
That's why.
Um, when I was in my master's degree in St. Louis, someone told me about the company, and I go, this is the company for me. I must work for this company. And there were some openings in California, Texas, and North Dakota. And I knew that North Dakota was a big hockey place because when I played for Vermont University, I played against North Dakota, and it was just a huge hockey town. Like it just revolved around hockey. And it's an hour from the Canadian border. So being from Sudbury, I was like, North Dakota, that's the place for me. It's close to Canada. There's lots of hockey. If I need to cross the border, I'm not too far. So I ended up working for them. And then kind of it was partnered with a health system, all true. And so I worked for them for 5.5 years, and that facility shut down April 30th.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So for the past couple weeks, I guess 6 weeks now, I have just been building up systems and other things to start my own nutrition coaching business.
that's really cool. So now, just kind of going into that environment, I guess maybe we can kind of touch on that. Just obviously with my background as a strength coach for ever, and to kind of touch on the idea, I think maybe like the difference in idea when it comes to nutrition, truly for athletes versus people that just want to eat like one. Kind of give me your thoughts on that a little bit.
Yeah, in terms of nutrition, so I'm a part-time trainer as well, but in terms of the nutrition side of things, it's often the limiting factor in an athlete's like program or life. So, you talk to any athlete, they show up to practice, they show up to games, if they're a hockey player, they're probably shooting pucks in their garage. But nutrition is that missing piece of the puzzle that people don't really start to think about until they make it to college athletics, when they can really start to, see improvements in their performance if they start to make those changes much earlier. And so when I work with athletes, usually we try to start them young so that like they're building healthy habits and knowing what to eat before and after a workout and on a game day when they're 12 rather than when they're 20. So that, they just maximize their performance earlier on. So nutrition is often that missing piece.
Isn't it funny too, right? Where they'll train like animals, for hours a day, 2 a days. Many of them do, as you said, they'll practice all day long, but be damned if they'll eat any protein that's not in a hamburger.
Yeah, so athletes usually, I usually ask them before I start talking about nutrition. I said, how can you become a better athlete? I need to do more push-ups. I need to train twice a day. No, you need to eat breakfast. You need to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and you need to fuel your body correctly. That's what you really need to do. We often forget about things like sleep and nutrition. We just think train harder, and that doesn't always help.
No, and I think it's funny, and even to kind of translate that over into are the typical sort of client that both you and I would typically see is like as I like to call them, the everyday champions. Where they just don't really know what to do. They're really working hard, but then they're not really translating that nutrition aspect truly to what it could be. It's kind of taking some of the methodologies from what we would help someone with as an athlete and kind of bring it down to the level when it comes to the everyday champion.
Yeah, the adult population, the active adults, 100%. And that's another thing that I see often is people come to me and say, Danny, I have a personal trainer. I work out 4 times a week, and I've been working out with this trainer for 6 weeks and I haven't lost a pound. And I go, oh, are you in a calorie deficit? And they're like, I don't know. So that happens a lot, is that people train so hard and they put in so much effort, or maybe they are trying to, change their nutrition, but they just don't know what to do, or they're doing the wrong things. So I know so many, adults want to lose body fat and feel better and look better and be more confident. And they just are so misinformed or confused, or have tried all the diets, Weight Watchers, keto, low carb, and they're just like, oh, why do I keep failing over and over? And I'm like, you're not the one who's failing. The diet industry has failed you. You just haven't been following a program that is best for you and that's sustainable. And that's where people like you and I come in.
Yeah, I think it's funny where, that was kind of one of the first things I wanted to touch on with you, is that, as we kind of talked about just yo-yo dieting, crash dieting. I was fortunate enough to have Jose Antonio on one of the podcasts, and the whole purpose of us getting together was to discuss a crash diet study that he did. But he didn't even, the coolest thing that I think that really translates even better is he didn't even have enough subjects to finish that study. So that tells me a lot about crash diets to kind of start off with. So when somebody comes to you, when it comes to yo-yo dieting, crash dieting, like how do you kind of, I know it's a broad question, but how do you sort of begin the process of approaching getting them out of that mindset?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I, when people reach out to me, most of them have tried multiple diets. So in the form that I send them, I go, which diets have you tried in the past and why did they not work for you? And many times they list at least 3, at least. And sometimes they just write, I've tried them all, and why, the same, they always write the same reason. Oh, I couldn't stick to it. It wasn't sustainable. I love real food. This plan didn't let me eat pizza. I couldn't drink beer. So there was just too much restriction, and humans want what they can't have. And the way that I approach it, one, I let them know like, hey, before we change your body, because that's what people want, they come to me for physical results, or that's what they think that they want. I go, hey, before you can change this, your body, we have to change your mindset. And most of these people have a diet mindset or a diet mentality where something has to be restricted, or there needs to be rules. And the thing about nutrition, I let them know like, hey, like nutrition is pretty simple, right? Like most people are not doing the foundational things consistently. And that's kind of the first step of my nutrition coaching program, is building a solid foundation of healthy habits before we even go into the fat loss, because 99% of people come to me for fat loss. But if we don't have a solid foundation, we can't really dive into the fat loss, because that's the more complicated, complex phase. We need a solid foundation first, just like building a house. I know most people probably know someone who, built a house and it was, built quote unquote, like half-assed, and 1 year later there's a flood and they got to get a new house, right? If you don't have a solid foundation, it's gonna fall apart. And I make sure that they understand like, hey, I want this to be your last stop. After me, there's no more diets, but it's gonna take 9 to 12 months, maybe more, to get there, because we have to undo 10 plus years of a diet mentality. So we need to solidify the mindset first. We need to build a solid foundation. Do you drink half your body weight in ounces of water per day? Do you eat fruits and veggies at most meals and snacks? Is there a lean protein at most of your meals and snacks? So building that foundation first so that they know how to eat. They don't have to ask me what to eat every minute of every day. Foundation. And then we go into the results phase where it's like, okay, now you got a good mindset, you got a good foundation. Let's hone in on the fat loss. And then after that, as you know, there needs to be some kind of reverse diet to maintenance, because I'm not going to leave someone at 1,200 calories for the rest of their lives. That's again why diets don't work. Diets are like, oh, you want to lose weight, 1,200 calories, go. And then you lose 30 pounds and you're like, what now? and that's how it goes.
Yeah, no, and it's that 1,200 calorie. It literally drives me insane. Like, there's so few people in the universe that will actually be able to be sustainable, even to not lose so much in such a short period of time, where it could have detrimental long-term effects. So when you're going through that process and you say, okay, this is going to take like 6 months, 9 months, a year, what's like your typical kind of reaction or rebuttal to that?
Honestly, the way that I explain why diets don't work, I always start there. Like, okay, I see you've tried all these diets, you know, how many years have you been doing this vicious cycle? And like, they'll say like 6 years, 11 years. And I'm like, okay, so you have tried to achieve this, this goal of fat loss for 11 years. Can you commit 12 months to me? Because we're going to do this right. And we're going to do this once. And just kind of letting them know, like, hey, the average diet lasts 3 weeks because it's unsustainable. And I go, have you ever lost weight? They're like, yeah, I've lost 30 pounds doing keto. I'm like, great. Did you maintain it? Nope, gained it all back. I'm like, okay. Don't you want to, do something where you achieve weight loss and maintain it? Like, what is the point of putting yourself through a calorie deficit, feeling hungry, feeling like you can't go out with your friends? What's the point of that if you're going to regain the weight? Like, can you commit to doing it right? It's going to take longer, but in the bigger picture, it's not going to take longer because you've tried for 11 years. I'm asking you for 12 months. And they're like, that makes sense. Like, I can commit 12 months. That sounds a lot better than, a vicious cycle of dieting 3 times a year for 11 years. So usually kind of breaking that down, they're like, yeah, I have been trying every diet, that comes on the market for 11 years. I think I can commit to 12 months if I can maintain my results.
Oh, and I think that's really important too, when the whole idea of the teaching aspect, like the skill, as I like to kind of call it, the skills of weight loss, once they're ready for that, to try to get them to understand that they're learning a new skill, just like, riding a bike or picking up an instrument, and for them to have a little bit more patience with themselves, and they'll get there a lot faster with patience.
Definitely. It's one of like the top 10 things when I explain to people, like, hey, for fat loss, you need a calorie deficit, you need resistance training, adequate protein, sleep, patience, time, accountability. Like, we always think like, oh, I need to eat less. You need patience. And most people are impatient because they're uncomfortable, they're unhappy, they're not confident. And that's going to come with time. But you have to trust the process. And it's really hard for people to be patient because, again, like, they're not happy with how they feel, and that's not a good feeling. But just kind of painting them a picture of a better, happier, healthier future, and just saying, like, reminding them like, hey, every single day we're taking steps. Like, it's going to take time, but it's going to be worth it because we're not going back to the old ways.
Well, I think that's such a really powerful statement to not think about kind of what they've done and just learn from that, and just don't worry about the mistakes that are made. If somebody, sometimes I'll get messages of somebody just saying, oh my God, I'm going to have beer. I had beer. So I want to make sure that I didn't blow all my progress. And for, just to reel them back in a little bit, say you had a couple of beer, it wasn't a keg in a night.
Yeah. And what we always say, me and the dietitian friends that, I've grown to kind of, partner with to kind of help each other out, is failure is feedback. Failure is feedback. People say like, I failed for 10 years. Okay. What can we learn from this? We learned that you do not do well with restrictive diets. We learned that you love carbs and that you love fats. So most failure, or all failure, is feedback, as long as you learn something from it.
Yeah. And I think it's for everyone to really, I feel anyway, that for people to understand and just try not to repeat those same mistakes over and over again, or mitigate the damage that they're doing them from those mistakes. And I feel that alone is such a big step forward for many just normal dieters.
Definitely. Some of my clients, one in particular, she she was going to a local restaurant, and she goes there pretty often, and she asked me, she goes, usually I get the salmon, and I get the sweet potato fries, and the veggie that comes with it. She goes, sometimes, trying to be healthier, I've gotten the double veggie. She goes, but then I'm dissatisfied because I really love the fries. And, and then I get the ice cream and then I'm too full. And I'm like, okay, well, if you want the fries, get the fries. Like some people just think like, I can't have this. No, like you can have the fries. Maybe once you're halfway done your plate, stop, pause, and ask yourself, am I still physically hungry? And if not, great, you had a couple fries, you had some salmon, you had some veggies, and boom, everybody wins. But let's say that this person goes out and binge eats everything, all the fries, extra dessert, 2 drinks, and then she goes, I failed, I ruined my diet. And I go, let's talk about it. What would you do differently if you could do it over again? So that's a question I often ask my clients if they have a party or a social event or a dinner. Like, okay, this is what happened. You had 3 beers. You planned on having 1. Would you change anything? And sometimes they're like, you know what? No. And I'm like, okay, then let's get back to work. And if they're like, you know what? I didn't want that 3rd beer. It was just like social pressure. I didn't want it. I was full. And I'm like, okay, so next time, maybe we stop at 2. Yep. Choose my number, So just asking themselves to analyze their behaviors, why they did them, what they would change. And then they learn from that. And then the next time they're like, I had 2 beers. I felt great. I wasn't full. I felt better the next day. And then that's a habit that they continue on moving forward.
Well, I think that's really awesome. And I think not many people out there that I've seen socially have honestly made just this kind of the information that you're bringing forward now, just with us following you as long as we have been. But very few people have really done as good a job as you as making the nutrition information really accessible and just really easy to understand. Like your whiteboard Wednesdays are awesome. Everyone check it out every single Wednesday. It's awesome. So, and I mean, I'm a super terrible artist, so I'll never do Whiteboard Wednesday. But kind of what was like the spark of or inspiration or whatever for you to kind of think of really trying to stay on that track of doing this?
Yeah, well, first, the Whiteboard Wednesday, I apologize to all the fans because I haven't had a whiteboard for a couple weeks, so I've had to post some throwbacks, but my new whiteboard is up as of this morning, so expect Whiteboard Wednesday to be back on track.
There we go.
Sometimes those next level whiteboards in the past, I used to spend 3 to 4 hours on those, but in the past 8 months with my increase in clientele and becoming a trainer, they've been more like 45-minute whiteboards. But in terms of, the inspiration, it's just so many people ask me questions that as a dietitian, I think this is probably something that everybody wants to know. Like the question, I did a video a couple days ago, I think 2 days ago, someone asked me, what food do I have to avoid, to lose belly fat? And I feel like a million people have this question when the answer is like, to lose fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. And to me, it's like, that's a simple answer. But to so many people, they have no idea what that answer is. And so the whiteboard, it's just like, okay, what are people's questions? Like, can I eat bananas or is the sugar bad? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this should be a whiteboard because so many people are afraid of eating bananas and there's really nothing to be afraid of. Boom, put it on the whiteboard. You can eat fruit. And then just like the pros and cons, pros of eating fruit, the cons, question mark, there's natural sugar. Not sure if that's a bad thing, so just taking real life questions and concerns and just simplifying it. Because I think people tend to overcomplicate nutrition. And that's what I see over and over. People are really making it harder than it needs to be. And like my goal is to make it as easy as possible. And I think if every single human in the world ate a fruit or vegetable at each meal and snack, everybody would be healthier. And that's such a simple thing. It's so simple that it's almost ridiculous. And that's what I try to explain to my clients, like, hey, like, you want results? The answers are simple, but I'm going to help, give you support and keep you accountable, because this is something you haven't done before. You're used to complex and, restrictive and things, and nutrition is simple. People just really overcomplicate it.
Yeah. And so many times, honestly, and this has kind of come up in recent future and recent couple of months, where I've got clients from other, I'm going to loosely call them trainers. I don't think they have any business, it's just my opinion, but for them to be terrified of eating a macronutrient because of another individual.
Yeah.
So like when somebody comes to you just saying, holy shit, I can't eat carbs make me fat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you kind of start to break those barriers? And again, I know broad question, but just to kind of, how do you start to go about breaking down those barriers when it comes to macronutrient fear?
Yeah, super good question. And honestly, like, just as you're like asking the question, I'm just like excited to answer it, because it's just like, it just makes me realize how much I love my job. I'm like almost like crying, like tears of joy, to be honest. It's probably a good thing that it's really sunny in here, so I can't see my eyeballs. But no, it's just honestly like, these people just have my heart, because they are just like, it just honestly, it really breaks my heart that so many people are afraid of carbohydrates. I don't know how this happened. I don't know if it's the Atkins diet, like a couple decades ago, that just made people so afraid of carbs. And what I do with most clients, it is, I ask them their goals, and most of the time it's weight loss. And I go, okay, like, weight loss, we need a calorie deficit. It doesn't matter if it's carbs, protein, or fats. If we're not in a calorie deficit, there will be no weight loss. And I explain to them, like, hey, when like research shows that when diet is, compared to diet, so let's say keto is compared to paleo, to low carb, to low fat, to Mediterranean, when these are all used in research for weight loss, every diet works if there's a calorie deficit. It does not matter. And that just proves that it's not about carbs. It's not about macros. If you eat more than your body needs, there will be weight gain. Like, if I ate 3,000 calories worth of protein and fat, I would gain weight. There's no carbs, but I would gain weight because I am not in a calorie deficit. So I think, and I always explain to my clients, they're like, so what's the deal with carbs? And I go, the thing with carbs, like, the reason they have a bad reputation, besides like, Atkins and people talking about it and people being like, I cut carbs out and lost 40 pounds. Great. You lost 40 pounds because you were in a calorie deficit. Awesome. That is what happened. But the reason that carbs have a bad reputation is because people tend to overeat them. It is a lot easier to overeat cereal and rice and bread than it is to overeat broccoli and grilled chicken, because fruits and vegetables and protein, they're satisfying. So the thing with carbs is, if we eat them in appropriate amounts based on our individual needs, we're going to maintain or lose weight. But it's when we eat too much of anything, that's where weight gain happens. So carbs are not the enemy. There are so many benefits to carbohydrates, in addition to performance, because people think like, oh, carbs are for athletes. I'm not an athlete. No, like, there are so many benefits to carbohydrates. And if you love them, you don't need to exclude them. And that's why I ask my clients on their form, it goes, what are your 3 favorite foods? Like, just like, and I give example pizza just to tell them like where my head's at. And usually that's what I see. I see pizza, I see beer, I see coffee, I see candy. And I'm like, great, I'm not going to take those away from you. And some clients think that I asked that question to take them away. And I'm like, no, I'm asking you what your favorite foods are so I can include them. I can help you find a way to enjoy them and still achieve your results. So carbs are definitely not the enemy.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I guess when it comes to the hyperpalatability of food, that's kind of like those foods that are taste so good, literally we can't resist them, and the combination of carbs, fat, sugar, salt,
Yum.
right? So I think many people say I'm addicted to carbs. When it comes to eating carbs, it's more like the hyperpalatability of having those really calorie-laden foods that have more than just one macronutrient.
Yeah, I think, and one of the big things that I teach my clients in that foundational phase is just how to create balanced meals. So a lot of people that feel like, oh, I'm addicted to sugar, I'm addicted to carbs, it's that's all they're eating. Like they don't have like protein at their meals. So they eat 5 bowls of cereal thinking like, I'm addicted to cereal, I'm addicted to carbs. It's like, no, you ate 5 bowls because your cereal has no fiber and no protein and no fat to help you feel satisfied. So in the foundation phase, like most of my clients are working on creating balanced meals to help them feel satisfied. And then, a few weeks down the road, they're like, I thought I was addicted to carbs, but really it's just I was lacking in other nutrients. Like their fiber intake on average is like 8 grams a day, which is lower than the American average. And most people don't eat enough protein. And if they do, it's all at dinner time. And so, there is such a thing as like, having no control. But if you just kind of slowly work at it every single day, like, okay, you're used to having, 4 cups of pasta. Let's take that down a bit. Let's do 2 cups. Let's add a grilled chicken breast. Let's add a little fresh Parmesan. Let's add some steamed broccoli. Boom. That's satisfying. And you can still include the pasta. It's still there. We're not taking it away. We're just kind of, making the portions more appropriate. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think, especially when you bring it, I mean, now I want Parmesan and pasta and chicken, but anyway, besides that, when it comes to that, like a hyperpalatability of food, like just when everyone says like, I'm addicted to sugar. Well, there's been one poor individual that I did have where she did have like a sugar, where she would spoon sugar from the bag. And she's the only one in 23 years that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. So, and not to use her as that grand example, but I think it's just when it comes to the accessibility of those hyperpalatability foods is a real problem. And it's just to get people to try to include some of them. But not at the amounts that they were in the past.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and when most people start to reduce them, like reduce the portions, they don't crave them as much. I know some people when they go on a lot of people have tried keto in the past few years and they go, when I went on keto, I stopped craving sugar. Well, that's because you're not having it at all. When you stop having something, you stop craving it. And I'm not saying like cut out all added sugars. A donut can still be a part of your day. But when we add, and this is going to get to a really good point, when we add more beneficial things, it kind of makes you want less of the other stuff, because then you start to crave healthy foods. Like a lot of my clients, they're like, I used to like crave donuts and now I'm like craving like Triscuits and cheese, because like their cravings are changing, or what their bodies want is changing, because once they start fueling their bodies with nutrients, their bodies are like, that's the good stuff, keep giving me the good stuff, that's what I want. They're like, I can't even look at this donut anymore because I don't want it. I can have it. I know that I can have it because I no longer have a bad relationship with food, but I don't even want it. And it's so rewarding when my clients are like, I used to have no control and, eat all the cookies when someone would bring them to work. And now I'm like, I ask myself, like, do I want one? No, and then they just kind of move on. But leading to my awesome point is that a lot of people think that when they want to lose weight or be healthier, they have to take stuff out. Like elimination is the answer, but the answer is actually addition. Instead of thinking, let's take the quote bad stuff out, instead, what I like to do is let's add more beneficial things in. And over time, that's going to take up some space, and the other stuff will kind of reduce in portion. So someone that eats a very processed diet, I'm like, okay, let's just add 1 cup of veggies to dinner. That's it. That's the only change we're going to focus on. Keep doing what you're doing. Add a cup of veggies to dinner. Over time, now it's 2 cups. Now we're adding a cup to lunch. Now we're having a fruit at breakfast. So I like to think in more addition rather than elimination. It's a lot healthier for the mindset.
I think that's really, I guess when it comes to the, if you want to call it the addiction side of eating, where people are so guarded on the food that they're eating that it becomes a big problem. And for myself, I had a really bad closet eating problem that wasn't until pretty recently that I really started to come forward with just how kind of bad it was. Like in the industry, we have to be perfect, and we can't eat bad food. I kind of just literally just remembered this. I was working for a big Globo gym, and I took my little ones to Pizza Hut, and the manager actually got approached saying, "Hey, I seen Troy at Pizza Hut, and he was eating pizza." Like they actually brought that up. So of course my manager had some super kind words for them, not kind at all, but I couldn't believe it. So that kind of started the whole thing of like, holy shit, well, I can't eat this food in front of anyone. So that snowballed into like really bad closet eating. Mm-hmm. Like the gym that I was at, to the Tim Hortons, it was about a 4-minute car ride. Well, I can smash 20 Timbits in 4 minutes before I opened my car door, they were all done. So like when it comes to people and having like some of those kinds of issues, I know it's again, big, broad question, but how do you start to kind of break those barriers down when it comes to the big, like real, like maybe the emotional connection that people have with food?
Yeah. So I guess what your question is, just to make sure I understand, is when people tend to categorize food, like these are good foods, these are bad foods. I want to be healthy, or I want to be skinny, or I want to be lean. I can only have good foods. Like, how do I break those barriers?
Yes.
So on my assessment form, one of the question is, do you categorize foods as good or bad? Yes or no? And I'm not sure. Most people will say yes. And then I ask them to rate, how would you rate your relationship with food on a scale of 1 to 10? So usually if they pick yes, it's going to be like 1, 2, or 3. And, maybe it's because something happened, or someone said something to them, or, they're just, very restrictive. And so one of the first things that I have them do is, in their first 1 to 2 weeks with me, is I have them do a mindset shift worksheet where I basically have them neutralize their negative food thoughts. So for example, let's say someone has a very poor relationship with food. They said, yes, I have a bad, I categorize foods as good as bad. They put a 1 on the scale. So very poor relationship with food. And I go, okay, picture this. You and I are sitting at a coffee shop, and someone comes up to us and asks us if we want a free donut. And they just have a box of donuts. I said, okay, what's your first thought when you see those donuts? They're like, I can't have one, or it's bad, or it's processed, or it's full of sugar. And I'm like, okay, now can you come up with, a neutral statement about these donuts? For example, instead of thinking donuts are bad, I can't have one, neutralize, donuts are sweet. So now, instead of having more of an opinion or a biased or a negative thought, which is donuts are bad, donuts are not bad. A donut is just a dessert. If my dog eats the furniture, that's a bad dog. But donuts are not bad. They didn't do anything, right? So let's neutralize those thoughts. Instead of donuts are bad, donuts are sweet. and that has more of like a positive vibe to it. We're not saying donuts are great and healthy and everyone can eat them. No, donuts are sweet. That is a fact. That's a fact. So I try to have people neutralize their thoughts about both food and their body. So if someone says like, oh, like my stomach is so flabby, oh, just say I have a stomach. And that's it, because it's really hard to be positive about a body that you don't feel good in. So when you're thinking like, oh, I don't like my stomach, I don't like my arms, and you're kind of, holding them with your hands and looking in the mirror, just neutralize your thoughts. I have a stomach, and just leave it at that. And one day it's going to be like, oh, like, look at my stomach. It's looking leaner. I fit better in my clothes. But one of those first steps is I have them do this worksheet where I list commonly, categorized bad foods. Like I have pizza and beer, and I have them try to come up with kind of a neutral or positive reframe. And then over time, I have them like go out into the world, and I have them, when it comes up, like, for example, if someone goes to the restaurant and their friend orders mozzarella sticks, they would add that to their worksheet and be like, my friend ordered mozzarella sticks. This was my first thought. I thought like, oh, that's deep fried, I can't have one. But, positive reframe. If I want to have one, I can. That's not going to make or break my results,
No, that's awesome. I love just to be able to reframe, kind of take the emotion out of the decision on why you are or not eating it. So I guess kind of break that connection is awesome. And kind of going into that, like with social media, as prevalent as it is with everyone's basically decision making when it comes to nutrition, I think it's awesome that the information access and being able to meet people like you. Obviously, I've been able to meet some pretty amazing people because of social media, but there's kind of a dark side when it comes to our industry as well, when it comes to social media. How do you feel, or what have you noticed when it comes to social media and kind of the way that people are bringing different ideas when it comes to nutrition to you? So different things that they're trying. Do you feel it's social media is really influencing heavy their decisions on how they're selecting their programs?
I think the reason most people choose a program or a diet is because they've seen someone else do it. Like usually it's like you see a friend or someone you're following, and they show you this image, that you want. And you're like, that person looks really good. What did they do? I'm going to do that. And the issue with that is that that person could just be a model that's posing for a program. And, even when people post like, this is what I eat in a day. Well, if I do one of those videos, what I eat in a day, I'm going to make sure it's a really good day, because sometimes even myself, a dietitian, sometimes I go to Dairy Queen and sometimes I go get a burger and fries. But if I were going to do a dietitian, like what this dietitian eats in a day, I would probably alter that to make sure it's one of my really healthy days. So when people see like a results-based post, like I lost 40 pounds doing this, my first question is, I wonder if they were miserable. Because the journey should not be miserable. I ask my clients constantly, when they say like, Danny, I lost 2 more pounds. And I'm like, great. Like you've been putting in the work. Like, have you been miserable at all the past 9 weeks? They're like, no, I went to the wing restaurant the other day. I only had a few wings and a beer. That's the first time I don't overeat. They're like, I can't believe I can include my favorite foods and still achieve my results. And I go, yes, I love that you are enjoying the process. They are not miserable. Restrictive diets are miserable. So that's actually my first thought when someone's like, lost 30 pounds doing keto. And I'm like, I wonder if they're miserable, and I wonder how long they're going to maintain it.
Yeah. Let's fast forward. We should almost have like those year later photos whenever we see those models, and to see what they look like a year later, to see, or just on that same scale of just being happy. I would love to see that that kind of shit show.
And the thing is that, photos, you were kind of in the physique industry, right? You know a lot about it. And, if you just turn your body slightly and kind of angle it, you can have abs. And if you just kind of breathe normally, guess what? Your belly's sticking out. Like, you can change what your body looks like by just like, positioning it differently. And so I love those Instagram versus reality pictures where it's the same person seconds apart, because I've taken one. And it's really funny how when you're just standing like a normal human, like, yeah, your gut's gonna stick out a little bit. But if you flex and turn and don't breathe and suck it in, it's like suddenly you have, a flat stomach, but you're not breathing while you're taking that photo. So it's just like, it's just, I don't know. It's just, you really have to see these photos and these like amazing transformations with, I don't know, a little bit of bias, I guess, because there's always, almost always there's something else going on. And some people do have true results, but you never know what's going on in the background. And that's the point. Like, you don't know if people are actually happy. You don't know if they actually did the diet that they're promoting. Maybe they're pretending to do this diet when they're actually starving themselves. Who knows? So you really just have to focus on yourself. I always tell my athletes and my clients, make it about you, because what you need is different than what your best friend needs, what your sister needs. Everyone has different needs, and everyone should have individualized, programs and nutrition coaching, because even twins, like I've worked with twins, and guess what? Their plans are different and their DNA is the same. And that just comes to show that everybody needs something different, and it's whatever works for you. It's all about what can you stick to long term. That's it.
I think, and kind of what I like to kind of bring up is, obviously I'm a big fan of nutrition trackers, because I think it really paints the tale over a long period of time. And almost trying to get them to repeat those really quote unquote good days, kind of like you being an athlete going through game film, and the coach is kind of picking apart, okay, Danny, you dropped an assignment here, you should have been over here, that kind of stuff. And I think to kind of think as those trackers, whether it's just written, whatever they ate, or actually really specific, to think of it as their game film every day, to kind of see where they're coming from and to repeat the good stuff. Same way we would coach you playing hockey. Okay, well, you did this and this here, we should probably try to do this and this here, and almost get them to self-coach going through those moments as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think when my clients like finally have like a really good balanced day, like they finally hit their protein goal, it might have taken them 6 weeks to get there, because it's hard. It's really hard. And, like this happened a few days ago, like seriously, this client, like it took months to get there. And, she finally hit her numbers like spot on with quality foods. And I go, this is it. Like, this is the day that we want to replicate most of the time. Obviously, I'm not telling her like eat the same exact meal and snack, but this is like almost like the perfect template. Like, you finally did it. Let's use that and kind of not copy paste it 100%, but let's use that as a guide. And, obviously I always tell them, like, don't forget to sprinkle a little bit of fun in there. So I call them fuel foods and fun foods. And I always make sure, like, if we don't have our favorite fun foods, even just a sprinkle of them, it's not going to be sustainable, because, people want a Dairy Queen on a Tuesday night when it's, 96 degrees Fahrenheit / 35 degrees Celsius. And sometimes they'll like text me like, can I go to Dairy Queen? It's a Tuesday. And I'm like, yes, you can. Let's order a mini, not a medium. And they're like, awesome. Yay. Like, I can't, they thought they had to wait for Friday to get ice cream. So your body doesn't know if it's Tuesday or Friday.
No, I love it's kind of funny. Like my dad knew nothing about nutrition, and he's the one that really taught me a lot about the whole training yourself with food. Because I was in there way back in the day, and I was having my cheat meal, and he was like, "Why are you stuffing yourself like that?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I was really good all week." Of course, super young at the time, right? So I was really good all week, so I'm going to eat whatever I want right now. He's like, "So you're training yourself with food?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." He's like, "That's how we train dogs, right? You're worth a lot more than that," and just walks away. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever. What does he know? And then after, I'm like, oh my God, right.
Yeah, that's a very common theme in a lot of people that reach out to me, is that they are, quote, good Monday through Friday until about 5 p.m. And then it falls apart in the weekend. And when they apply, it's like, I've tried everything. I can't lose weight and maintain it. My metabolism is broken. My hormones are in balance. And then when I break down their week, it's like they're in a calorie deficit Monday through Friday. And then Friday night, Saturday is just like a huge surplus that throws off the whole week. And then they're back to square one. So I always emphasize, like, hey, you don't have to wait till Friday to have a beer. You don't have to wait until Saturday to have pizza. We can sprinkle, these fun foods throughout the week so that you don't have a binge mentality on the weekend, and that's been really helpful for a lot of them, because usually it's like they look forward to the weekend to basically have this binge, when we can just focus on balance 24/7, 7 days a week, where it's like, in a general day, whether it's a Monday or a Thursday, 80 to 90% nutrient rich foods, and then 10 to 20% like some fun foods, like, maybe breakfast is like eggs with, sprouted grain toast and strawberries and avocado, and snacks are on point. And then, oh, it's dinner, like I hit my goals for the day and I have a little wiggle room. I'm going to have a mini blizzard. Awesome. That's like a really solid day of balance, where you had a lot of fuel foods, you hit your goals, you made ice cream fit into it. Awesome. Everybody wins. There's no restriction. Your body is fueled, it's getting the nutrients it needs, and you had a fun food. So I don't know. It doesn't get any better than that.
No, I just love the idea of it, especially when somebody new kind of comes and they just don't get the idea of the process because they've gone through those highly restrictive diets. And I just try to get an idea of what they're doing right now. And they go, well, I kind of eat this. Say, okay, so how often do you eat that? We kind of go through that process of just mitigating the amount of times maybe that throughout that week that they're eating whatever that food is. And for them to start to lose the weight that they're looking for, and they're just like blown away, saying that I thought I'd have to cut everything out, instead of being able to have foods like as you call them, fun foods. So
because they're fun,
right? Ice cream's awesome. So now I guess in touching on a good segue, I guess, to weight fluctuations, and how they kind of really they're true for everyone when it comes to weight loss. So when it comes to weight fluctuations, I guess first, how do you really explain them to newer clients, and just to let them know how that's going to affect their progress?
Yeah, so one of the first things that I'll explain to them about weight loss is that it's not linear. Like, and I'll usually, like, if I'm on a Zoom, like I have a little like mini whiteboard, or I'll just grab a piece of paper and I'll be like, this is what you think it's going to look like. And I just draw like a big straight line down. I was like, here's what it's really going to look like. And I have a whiteboard that's exactly that. Like, weight loss is not linear, because weight fluctuations are so normal, and we need people to know that it's normal. Like, your weight can fluctuate overnight, like 1 to 6 pounds, because of things like, sodium related water retention and carb related water retention. And if you've had more food, you just have more food sitting in your GI tract, which means you're going to be way heavier on the scale. Oftentimes people go on vacation, right? Maybe they go away for 4 to 7 days. They come back, they're like, oh my God, I gained 6 pounds. I'm like, here's what you're going to do. Said, we're not going to panic. Here's why. And I explained to them like salt retention and carb retention and, all the things. And I go, you're going to go back to your, pre-vacation habits, everything we were doing before. You're going to get your movement in, get your veggies, get your water. Within 6 days, they're back to their pre-vacation weight. Because when you gain weight that quickly, you did not put on 6 pounds of fat. You were holding on to like a lot of water and just kind of food bulk just sitting there. And with women, if it's your menstrual cycle, that's another part of weight fluctuations that everybody loves, of course. So I just kind of explained to them weight loss is not linear. It's totally normal for the scale up and down. What we're looking for is a downward trend, a downward trend. And just seeing that lower number every few days or few weeks is a good sign.
I think that's, and it's funny because training so many younger female athletes, just touching on when it comes to their cycle. At first, I couldn't, testing all these really elite level hockey players, teams that were coming in, and then ever so often I'd see like their numbers change, and it was like a visible change. And I'm like, what is going on? And sometimes not really making that connection. Then I reached out to another researcher, Stacy Sims. She wrote a book, Roar, which is really cool when it comes to training females. And then kind of finally made that connection when it comes to menstrual cycle, just kind of like thinking differently when it comes to the cycle for women. And now it's so common, it just may be weird because I'm like a 46-year-old dude, and when I'm meeting someone, so when's the last time you had a menstrual cycle? When's the last time you took a poop?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are they tend to be weird things to talk about. But
Yeah.
honestly, like so many of my clients will, one of them came to me because she says, I've been constipated for the past 5 years and she wanted to lose weight. And I'm like, let's figure out the bowel movements first, because the weight is not going to come off if we don't have like a regular GI tract. So like sometimes you have to focus on other things first. And, I think that's what people forget is like, oh, they want fat loss, but if their hormones are all in balance and their cortisol is high, and, if their blood sugars are all over the place, we need to be in balance before we focus on fat loss. And that's why I have that foundational phase, is because the body doesn't want to lose fat. That's the last thing the body wants to do. The body wants to resist change. Fat is safe. Even though, we're not cavemen anymore and there's food just about everywhere, the body still thinks that it's going to starve any day. So it does not want to lose body fat. It's the last thing it wants. So you got to put in the work and be consistent, but the body is not going to efficiently lose fat if there's other issues like bowel movement issues or hormone issues or sleep deprivation.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you ask someone like how they say, "Oh my God, I've been so stressed all week," and you take a look at their weight trackers, and you see, okay, so you're probably not going to lose any weight this week, and it's going to be okay, but it'll come off. Let's just try to work on your stress levels. And then the kind of weird, like, kind of crickets look that they give you, like, what are you talking about? I just Once they kind of get it, and I love that moment where you just really realize that the client just everything kind of clicks together, where they understand where stress and sleep and their cycle and so much more kind of plays into it. Now, I just wanted to touch on fiber before I kind of lost the train of thought there. Just kind of give me a lowdown on fiber. They've all heard it from me a million billion times, but maybe from somebody else, so we can kind of get to the bottom of fiber.
Yeah, so the thing with fiber, which is typically found in like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, in some nuts and seeds, is that most people don't eat enough fiber. Now, there are situations where people need a low fiber diet because of like stomach issues or, certain like autoimmune conditions. Most people in general don't get enough fiber. The daily recommended amount for women is 25 grams, and for men, it's 38. The American average, I don't know what the Canadian average is, might be similar. I'm super American now, been here for too long, 10 years, almost 11, I think. Yep. And the American average is 13 grams. 13 grams. My chicken avocado wrap has more than 13 grams in just like 2 ingredients. And so that's not good, America. 13 grams is not good. And that's why, a lot of people don't feel satisfied or have, mood swings or low energy. And, the reason being is that the American diet is highly processed, and processed foods are typically low in fiber. And most Americans, and I'm sure it's pretty similar with Canada and the States, is that, they don't eat enough fruits and vegetables in a day. So only 1 out of 10 Americans eats the recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables. 1 out of 10. So if you're in a room with 30 people, 3 people are eating enough fruits and veggies. So when people say like, Danny, I want to be healthier, let's start with the fruits and veggies, because chances are, based on the research, you're not getting enough. So that really helps people hit their fiber goals. Like if everyone was eating the recommended amount of fruits and veggies per day, they would probably hit their fiber goal. And if we chose whole grains more often than refined grains, we would meet our fiber goals. So, some top fiber foods: oats, berries. So when people are short on their fiber, like a lot of my clients at the beginning, they're like at 10 grams, they're typically near that average between like 10 and 16. I'm like, okay, 1 cup of raspberries, 8 grams, let's add it in. That's an easy 8 grams. Like it's not hard to eat a cup of raspberries, especially if you got a raspberry bush in your yard like I did growing up. There we go. We're 8 grams in, half an avocado, boom, 7 more grams. Like, oh my God, now we're getting 40 grams of fiber without trying. So, one of the things that I have my clients do is include fiber, at meals and snacks, unless it's right before exercise. That's a different type of conversation. Sports nutrition, high fiber, not good before exercise, not right before, but fiber helps you feel satisfied. It improves, it gives you more stable energy throughout the day. So most people know like, oh, if you eat a bunch of candy, you're going to get a lot of energy quick and then you're going to crash. It's because there's no fiber to stabilize that energy. So, most people need more fiber unless there's a medical situation involved. But yeah, easy ways to get it: oats, avocados, berries, beans, lentils, and we've got it.
Oh, that's awesome. It's funny because you bring up raspberries. Like my morning every day is basically 15 grams of chia seeds, 40 grams of oats, 50 grams of raspberries, 50 grams of strawberries, 25 grams of blueberries, and a shake on the side kind of thing. So that's the morning pretty much every single morning. So
sounds delicious and very specific.
Yeah, I'm pretty particular, so can't tell by now, I guess. So when it comes to somebody losing weight, what do you feel is like if you had to pick, like, I love like the idea of like one thing. I know there's way more, but if you had to pick like one thing for someone to work on if during a weight loss journey, what do you think pops out of your mind?
Besides a calorie deficit?
That's about it, right?
I mean, you need the calorie deficit, but in terms of the habits, yes. I think it's, making most of the meal, like lunch and dinner and breakfast, is making most of it fruits and vegetables. Like that's what people aren't doing. And once they start to do that, they start to see results and they feel better. They feel more like, they explain to me, like, I feel like fresh and I feel like my skin feels better. And it's just because you're giving your body those vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. And like, yeah, besides the calorie deficit, like most people just need to eat more fruits and vegetables and sit less. I know you said one thing, but that's really hard.
That's okay. We'll take
one nutrition, one movement goal. Like people sit too much. The human body is not meant to sit as much as we do. We sit a lot. I probably should be standing right now, to be honest. I feel bad.
Well, we'll let it go this time. Is there anything you're working on now that you kind of want to let everybody know, or is there anything like that you got going on?
Well, I am launching my business next week. So that is a secret that I've been holding on to that many people have been waiting to hear. Yes, Danny the RD is going out into the world solo as of next Monday. So pretty excited for that. It's been a long journey. That's
huge. So I was saying on that, so where can people find you?
Instagram. So that's where most people can find me and kind of see what I do, Whiteboard Wednesday, recipes, lots of dog pictures. I can't help myself. My doodles are very half human. One of them is trying to tell me that, time's almost up. But no, at Danny _the_RD, that stands for registered dietitian. That's where most of my people are. And I always appreciate the comments and the follows and tagging me in recipes. It's really fun for me to see people make my recipes and be so excited. Just because I think a lot of people are, especially when it comes to cooking, they're overwhelmed or they're just like, oh, they think that it's hard. And when I show them like, you can make these healthy cookies with 4 ingredients, like you can cook and you can bake, like I'm going to show you. And they're like, oh my gosh, I just made a crock pot for the first time and it took 5 minutes. And I'm like, yes, we can do this. So that's what my Instagram is all about, like recipes and, fat loss tips and sports nutrition tips and dogs, of course. If you don't like dogs, probably don't follow me. And then on Facebook, my Facebook page is Danielle Rancourt. My dad would hate me if I actually said that. It's Rancourt. It's French. He says it's not Rancourt, but in America, people just can't roll their R's. So I just go with it. Danielle Rancourt. It's Danielle Rancourt for my French friends in Canada. So Danielle Rancourt, dietitian, nutritionist is my Facebook page. And soon I'll have a website. Soon. That'll be released in a couple weeks, and that's where people can, apply to work with me, contact me, ask me questions, and that's dannytherd.com.
Awesome. So I, again, really appreciate it. I know you're super busy, obviously, with launching your new business and stuff, so thanks for taking the time. Hope we can do this again sometime.
Hopefully we can do it in person in Sudbury when they let me come back to Canada.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. Fun fact, this is actually my first podcast. So
no way. Awesome.
You should be honored.
I very, very am.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
You got it.